Today's June 20th, 2023. I'm Nicole Nokon. I'm interviewing Renate Langiani. We are in Görlitz, Germany, and this interview will be conducted in English. Today's June 20th, 2023. I'm Nicole Nokon. I'm interviewing Holocaust survivor Renate Moore-Langiani. We are in Görlitz, Germany, and this interview will be conducted in English. Could you please introduce yourself? Tell us your first name and your last name.
Renate Moore-Langiani.
Could you spell your last name?
Langiani.
And Moore is spelled?
Muhr.
What was your name at birth?
Renate Moore.
Could you spell the maiden name again, please?
Renatemuhr.
When were you born?
On October 18, 1929.
And how old are you today?
93, going on 94.
Where do you live today?
I live in Brazil, in the southeastern state of São Paulo.
What's the name of the town you were born in?
São José dos Campos.
That's the town where you live today. What's
Yes.
the name of the town you were born?
Görlitz.
Could you spell?
Görlitz.
And which country was that?
Germany.
And today it's still Germany?
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about your family background. What were your maternal grandparents' names?
Hermann Stillmann and Anthony Stillmann.
And what was their nationality?
They were Hungarian.
And their religion?
Excuse me?
Their religion?
Jewish.
What language did they speak?
As far as I know, German, because they came to Germany when my mother was 3 or 4 years old.
Can you describe what they were like? Did you get to
No,
know
I
them?
never. I remember my grandmother. She was like grandmothers should look. She was small and always clad in black and very sweet. And I saw her just once a year, so I don't remember her so well.
What was your mother's name?
Käthe Stillmann.
And after marriage,
Käthe Moore.
where was your mother born?
In Budapest.
And what year was that?
1898.
Was your mother a religious person?
Excuse me?
Was your mother a religious person?
Yes, her family was Orthodox.
Jewish Orthodox.
Yeah.
What education did your mother get?
Well, she worked as a secretary during the war, the First War.
Mm-hmm. What's your strongest memory of your mother?
She was a strong-willed person. She saved our family.
Was she a strict mother when you were a child?
No, she was very loving.
Do you remember your parental grandparents? Your father's parents?
I'm sorry, I didn't get it.
Do you know the name of your father's parents?
It was Ernst Abraham Moore. And my grandmother was Anna Moore. She was born Bloch.
And where was your grandfather born?
Well, I don't remember. He died before I was born. I don't know his...
Do you remember where they lived? The parents of your
They
mother?
lived at first, my father was born in Opole. And then when my grandfather retired, he had the Stadtapotheke there. And they moved to Breslau, it's Wroclaw now. And my father lived there too until after the war he came to Görlitz.
And your father's mother, what was her name?
My father's mother was Anna Bloch. Anna Bloch.
So what was your father's name?
Johannes Ignaz Moore, but everybody called him Hans, just Hans.
And where was he born?
He was born in Opole on June 5, 1890.
Was he a religious person?
No,
But the family was Jewish, right?
we were Jewish, but they're just Jewish.
What education did he get?
Well, actually, he wanted to be a pianist. He played the piano beautifully, but his family did not condone it. So they sent him and his older brother in 1911 to Paris to learn business. And that's what he was. He was a businessman.
And he came to Görlitz and worked in Görlitz?
After the war. After the war, because his older sister, his elder sister, was living here. She was married to my uncle Fritz Kohn, and he came to Görlitz.
That was after the First World War, right?
Yes, about 1924, if I'm not mistaken.
What was his occupation, his job here in Görlitz?
Well, as far as I learned later on, he first worked for the Hannes people, the Hannes family, and later he had his own firm. It was a wholesale firm, and it belonged to him alone.
And was there something you especially liked about your father?
Well, his piano playing, I loved it. Every day when I came from school, we had a music room, a grand piano, and he would sit after he came from the office and would study or play, and I sat there mesmerized the whole afternoon listening to him playing piano.
Did he have a favorite composer he loved to play? Do you remember?
I don't remember exactly. I was 4, 5, 6 years old, but it was all classical music.
So, do you know how your parents met?
Yes, it was a funny story, because my father's best friend was Evelyn Lowe's father. His name was Hermann Löwenberg at the time, and they traveled together on vacations. And my parents met 3 times at completely different, by chance, on 3 different places. One at a beach, one at a resort in Austria, and one in Switzerland. And on the 3rd time, finally, he got the courage to ask my mother to marry him.
And when did they get married?
In 24th January 1926. 26, yes.
And do you have any siblings?
Yes, I had an older brother. He was born in December 1926, but he died at the age of 58 of a heart attack.
What was your brother like?
Well, he was highly intelligent. He lorded everything over me. I was his dumblest little sister. And we played a lot. We played a lot together. We went on excursions we were together all the time. And and we came to Brazil together, and the whole family. Whole family, no, not my father. My father came 6 months before us.
Yeah. How did you get along, your brother and you, as children?
Oh, we played a lot. I remember we played in my uncle's house. They had a big yard behind their villa, and we played a lot in the grounds of the synagogue. I remember we had 2 boxes full of worthless German money from the war, and another box with nuts. Nuts. We played with them sitting on the ground. That I must have been very small at the time.
So let's talk a little bit more about your family life.
Yes.
Where did your family live?
Well, we live on Moltke Straße 44, on the first floor.
Can you describe your childhood home a little bit?
Excuse me?
Can you describe the apartment, the place where you lived as a child?
Well, to me it was very big. I'd like to see it, but it's not possible. There were a lot of rooms. Should I describe it? When you came in on the left side, there was a kind of larder. It was locked. And then came a maid's room, then came a music room, then came a dining room, then came a living room. And then down the corridor, my parents had their own room, and they had a big door, double door, to our children's room. And I remember up in the, between the 2 doors, we had a swing where we played, sing, and one with rings where we could exercise when it was raining or snowing or something like that. Then going around back on the other side, there was a bathroom, and then came the kitchen, and that's all.
What language did you speak at home?
German, just German.
And were there any other languages spoken in your family?
Not that I know of.
Were there other people living together with your family in the flat?
No.
In the apartment? Maids? Or
we had a maid. No, I had a nanny, a maid. No, I'm not sure. I remember a cook and a nanny. Or perhaps she did both things.
And they lived with you in your apartment?
Yes, there was a room for them.
Do you remember your nanny's name?
No, I don't.
How would
Later on, I had a babysitter. A babysitter, yes. She was Gerda Löwy. And I don't know when she came into my life, but she would sit by my side after school and help me with my lessons, and then she would take me to my friends' homes, and we spent the whole afternoon together. But then she disappeared, and I only heard of her a few years ago, when her family, they are in Australia now, they found me. I had a lot of photographs in my photo album.
And was Gerda alive then? Did you meet her again or talk to her again?
No, I never knew. But then I left Görlitz too for a Jewish school. I never saw her again.
How would you describe your family's economic situation?
Well, I know the family as a whole. We had a great grandfather who was very rich, and he was known to have said that nobody in the family would have to work anymore. But of course it didn't happen. I remember we had a comfortable life. We had a car. We went out, took a lot of outings on weekends, and my mother drove the car too. So actually, when we went to Berlin, it was she who drove. My father didn't like to drive. But I don't think we were neither rich nor poor. We had a comfortable life.
What part of Görlitz did you live in?
I don't know. I know the street, but I don't know which.
In the historical city center? Or?
Yeah, it was 3 blocks to my school and 3 blocks to my uncle and to the synagogue.
And what kind of neighborhood was that? Was it mainly Jewish or mixed?
I don't know. I know our building, I learned it now, that our building was owned by a Jewish family. But I don't know anything about the whole neighborhood.
So where did your family go shopping? Do you remember certain
yes,
shops?
At that big department store, I forgot the name. My mother would take me there, and I remember her taking me to a butcher on that big, that very old part of the town. She would take me there. Otherwise, I don't think we, except for weekend outings, I don't remember her taking me anywhere.
And who did the shopping? Your mother or the maids?
No, I don't think so.
So do you remember where your clothes were bought in a department store?
Excuse me?
Your clothes, when you got new clothes, were they made for you or did you go to a shop? Do you remember?
I don't know.
Was your household a kosher household? Did
No.
you keep kosher? And could you describe a typical dinner in the Moore family?
Well, actually, we didn't have dinner together. My brother and I had a small table in our room, our bedroom, with 4 little chairs around it, and we had our evening meals there. And I remember Saturday was my best day of the week because they served us scrambled eggs with wieners and mustard. That was my favorite dish.
And during the week?
After our hairs were washed.
That was the special treat after?
Yeah, we never had dinner with my parents. I guess they went out almost every day, every evening.
So the cooking was done by a cook?
Yes, but the midday meal.
She made, your mother?
No, we had a cook.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
So you said your parents were going out a lot. What did your family do in the evenings?
Well, I guess I don't know exactly, but I remember they're going to the theater quite a lot, and probably to friends' homes and the family and other people of the family.
Do you remember names of your parents' friends?
Yes, only some. The Goldbergs. No, Goldbergs were not of my parents' crowd, but Eva Goldberg's mother was a friend of my mother's. I remember the Toczek name. I remember, well, Fritz Kohn was my uncle. Actually, I don't remember any more names.
And did your parents play with you and your brother?
No, I don't think so. My mother was always busy. She went with my father and came back with my father.
So can you describe your hometown, Görlitz, as it was in your childhood?
Well, what I remember was first at Elisabethstrasse, where we were pictured there. We would go to the open air market with my mother. I know at at the corner of the Elisabethstrasse, there lived some friends of hers, but I don't know which ones. And we walked a lot around the town, and we used to go on weekends. My brother and I went a lot to my uncle's. We would sleep there. Their children were all out of the house. They were not living there anymore. And that's all I remember. I remember those on the parks or places where I played in the sand. Somebody would take me to play the sand. And on weekends we usually got down to the Neiße. There was a kind of resort or club there, and we could swim and spend the day and have a picnic there. I remember it was very nice.
And can you describe the relationship between Jewish and non-Jewish Görlitzes when you were?
I didn't have any other friends than Eva Goldberg and Evelyn Lowen. I don't remember any other.
And would you say you had a happy childhood in Görlitz?
Yes, I certainly did.
Why is
I
that?
remember. My parents were very kind, and I had no problem at home.
So how was your family integrated into the Görlitz society?
Well, I guess all their friends were Jewish. I don't think my mother had any other friends than them.
But as you said, they had a rich social life.
Yes, but I remember they're going out almost every evening.
Do you remember if your parents belonged to any organizations or clubs?
No, I don't know.
Not religious or political?
I don't think so.
What was Jewish life in Görlitz like? Do you remember? Was there a big Jewish community?
Excuse me?
Was there a big Jewish community at the time?
Well, as I learned later, much later, time I didn't know, there were, at our time, there were only about 400 Jews in the town.
And was your family a part of the Jewish community?
Yes, I think so.
And what synagogue did your family attend? Where did they go to? Did you go to synagogue with your family?
To the
To
synagogue?
the synagogue?
Yes, with my mother. I don't remember my father or my brother because we sat upstairs. No? I remember exactly where we sat, on the right side up there, but I don't remember seeing my father there. We were downstairs. I don't know whether my father went every Friday there.
And how often did you go, you and your mother?
Every week, every Friday.
And did you like going there?
Yes, I did.
And how were Jewish rituals and laws observed in your family?
Laws. Well, I don't. I believe all Jewish feasts or saintly days or whatever were celebrated at my uncle's because he loved having the whole family there. There were always many people, and birthdays. I remember I don't remember it because I was sleeping upstairs, but her 70th birthday was celebrated at my uncle's home here in Görlitz.
And did you receive a religious education?
Yes, I had Hebrew lessons. That's all I remember.
Did you like learning Hebrew?
Yes, I learned.
And as a child, did you identify as a Jew?
Yes. I remember one of the feasts, I don't know which one, as the youngest of the family, I had to read some Hebrew, I don't know exactly what it was, from a book, and I was very proud because I had read it all correctly. That's all I remember. And I remember Hanukkahs at my place, but just the four of us. My father would play the Hatikva on the piano, and we would sing and get gifts. I even remember what I wore. I wore at the time when I was 5. I got my first watch, and I was very proud of it. And I had a blue, dark blue velvet dress with a lace collar. I still can see myself there. And I also got a bracelet, a golden bracelet. That's what I think that was my last, perhaps not the last, before last Hanukkah in Görlitz.
And did you have a favorite Jewish holiday you like best?
Well, Hanukkah, of course.
And can you describe Shabbat at your home?
No.
You didn't have Shabbat meals? And let's talk a little bit about your time in school in Görlitz. Which school did you attend in Görlitz?
Well, it was on the Schulstraße. I have a remembrance. It was public school number 2. It was all in red brick. I visited the first time I came to Görlitz, and I liked school very much. I had no trouble with my school and my what do you call it, classmates. I was the only Jewish girl in the class. They played with me and talked to me, and later on they told me I would be sent out of the class on history classes, and they would tell me what the teacher had said.
Let's go back. Do you remember your first day at school?
Yes, I remember. I remember the teacher came in and took a piece of chalk and wrote the whole alphabet from A to Z on the board, and told us to repeat it with her. And I thought, my God, how will I ever learn all these signs? Yeah, but eventually one did. No?
And did you have this typical German Zuckertüte, the sugar cone?
Yes, of course. And when I came home, I got that, what do you call that? Zucker, I don't know. It was full of chocolate and sweets. And I got a leather map, and I have a picture of this day. It was a nice beginning. I loved school.
And who were your friends at school?
I don't remember any. I was the only Jewish girl in my class.
Did you have a best friend at the time when you were?
Yes, it was Eva Goldberg. She would come to my house, my home on Mondays, and I would go to hers on Thursdays, every week.
What was Eva like?
Well, I don't know. I remember she lived in a very small apartment. We went by streetcar, and she had a living room. They lived in a small apartment. So she had a bed in her living room, which was went into the wall, and both of us would take it down and sit on it, and then we would play with our dolls or study Hebrew. And we had a nice time every time. And on Mondays, I know she came to my home, but I don't remember what we did.
And you said your Kindermädchen, your nanny, took you there to Eva's place. Gerda took you to Eva's place.
Yes, sometimes it was Gerda and sometimes my mother, but usually it was Gerda who took me, and then my mother came to fetch me, and sometimes we had cake and coffee and cocoa there, and then we went home.
And after school, what was your favorite pastime? What did you like best?
Well, swimming, as far as I can remember.
And did you get swimming lessons?
Yes, I remember I had swimming lessons somewhere in town in a closed up pool, but they discontinued after some times, but I didn't think any. Probably I was expelled. I never finished the whole course of
And did
learning
you,
to swim.
like your dad, did you learn the piano too?
Yes, I had piano lessons, Hebrew lessons, and swimming lessons.
Görlitz after 1933. As you were a young girl then, a child, did you feel any danger
No,
after the Nazis came to
No.
power?
no.
And how did you first, as a child, experience discrimination or anti-Semitism?
At school, in my second school year. The first, I perhaps my teacher in the first grade was Jewish because she came to my house, visited my parents. I don't think anybody then being Jewish would do that. And I remember my mother telling me, she said I was very shy and perhaps I was a little autistic, I don't know, because she said when somebody touched me, I would take my arm away. That's what my mother told me. But I was very quiet and very shy too, so. And in the second grade, I had this couple of teachers, and they treated me very badly.
Can you describe what happened? Was there a certain
I remember one day, because when the class started, first we had to raise our hands and sing the national anthem and all that. And then she would inspect all children's hands to see whether they were clean, the nails were clean. And I had a Band-Aid over my index finger, and she said, you put this Band-Aid because your nail is dirty. And she gave me a title, I don't know what you call that, and I was very, very, not angry, I felt very bad about it, but I didn't know what it was about, you know.
Did your parents at home discuss the political situation
No,
in Germany?
No, not in front of us.
Did your family have a radio at
Yes.
home?
I remember when I came from school, the radio was on, and I can still hear it, Hitler's voice shouting over the radio. I remember that. Every time when I came from school.
And how did it make you feel?
Bad.
What was the atmosphere at home? Did you feel that your parents were worried or afraid? Did they show their feelings?
I don't think so. But my mother made my father came to Brazil in June 1938. But it must have been in June. I was probably at home because at the time I had already gone to a Jewish school near Berlin, near Potsdam. And I remember she forced my father to come to Brazil, to go to Brazil, because it was the only place where we could get a visa. My mother's younger sister lived there. And she told me whenever somebody came for my father, I should always say, mein Vati ist in Brazilian. He is visiting my aunt and he's coming back soon. And it actually happened. I told him, mein Vater kommt bald wieder. She wrote this in a letter.
And did your parents discuss emigration plans with you kids?
No.
You mentioned that you went to another school, so when did your parents decide that you should go to another school?
After those episodes in my second school year. I went on the next term, and first term in 1938.
And did your brother continue school in Görlitz?
No, he went to Berlin to the Kaliski school.
And what kind of school was your new school?
Yeah, I remember now, excuse me. He was beaten once on the street. A bigger boy, he must have been 10 at the time, a bigger boy came and asked him whether he was Jewish, and punched him in the nose and broke him a teeth, and he came home crying and all that. And I believe that was the time my parents decided to take us away from Görlitz, from the school.
Please repeat the name of his school in Berlin?
It was Kaliski, my brother's school.
And what kind of school was the new school in Kaput?
It was Waldschulheim. It was near a lake, it was in the woods. It was at the side of the Templin Lake. It was a very nice place. They had a lot of houses. It was not one school, there were a lot of houses. And one of the houses had been given the school by Einstein when he went to the United States. It's a museum now.
And was it a Jewish school?
Yes, Jewish. Everybody was Jewish.
How did your parents explain the necessity to change schools, or was it clear after the incident?
I don't think they had to explain, we knew it.
Did you mind leaving your friends behind in Görlitz when you left?
No, they left before us. Eva Löwenberg, Evelyn Lowen had left 1 year earlier for the States, and even Eva was away too, so we were the last to leave.
Yeah, so you didn't mind going away from Görlitz?
No.
What recollections do you have of school life in Kaput, in your new school?
Well, actually the only things I remember from there, I remember my classroom, I remember where we had our morning meal. I remember I was at home, we had bread and butter and a lot of things, and scrambled eggs, and there we had oat with milk there. That's why I remember. And the only other thing I remember was my bedroom. There were 2 bunk beds. I had the upper one, and I loved to read ever since I could read. So I had a flashlight, and I had a series of children's books, and I read them when the lights went out. I read it under my eiderdown with a flashlight until I slept. And once I fell out of the bed, but my eiderdown went before me, so I didn't get hurt. That's the only thing I remember.
And did you have a favorite book you read?
Yes, Nesthäkchen by Else Uri. I had when the first time I came to Germany, I bought the whole collection and took them with me.
Did you read it to your children later on, Nesthäkchen?
No, they were in German. My children don't know German.
Did you have new friends at Kaput that were close to you?
I don't remember. No, I only spent 6 months there.
And was school life affected by the political situation?
I don't know. I have no idea.
You attended this school in Caput in 1938, so do you remember Kristallnacht?
Excuse me?
Do you remember Kristallnacht? You were at Caput
Yes,
at the
of
time,
course.
right?
Yes. Well, it was a sad affair. It was not Kristallnacht. It was the next morning, and we were sitting at 8 o'clock. The classes started, and we were sitting in the class, and a chair came flying through the glass windows and landed not by my side. There was a young boy sitting next to me, and it fell on his arm. And everybody ran to the window, and when we looked down, there were a lot of people in Hitlerjugend, and children, and I don't know, and they were shouting abuse at us. And but I don't remember our staying there long. We were, our teachers came, and we were rounded up on a downstairs, and then we went away. They let us go away. And we walked as far as Berlin on foot the whole day. We left in the morning, arrived there in the evening. And I still remember some teachers had little children inside bath towels. They were, I don't know what happened to the other children. But I remember our teacher showing us, doing a kind of class, explaining everything we were going through. We went as far as Potsdam, and then the road to Berlin. And we arrived in the evening. And when I arrived, my mother was always there. They had telephoned all parents, and they came to Berlin to get their children. I never returned to Görlitz after that. I stayed in Berlin.
Have you, on your way through Berlin, seen shattered shop windows or burning shops?
No, we smaller children didn't see anything, but I know they went after the bigger ones. They fled. I have a report I brought to you in German. What happened, because in 2005 I visited Caput, and it was only then that I learned everything that had happened there.
And do you remember what you felt on that day when the chair came flying?
I don't remember being very scared or something. I don't know.
And you met your family in Berlin. What did you do then?
No, my uncle, I had, my mother's family, some had left for Israel the year before. But my uncle, my mother's younger brother, he lived there on Friedrichstraße, and we stayed there until our immigration in December. 2 months. No, 1 month, from November to December.
And your father had been in Brazil?
He was in Brazil.
When did he leave for Brazil?
In June. I guess it was in the summer vacation, because I remember my father still there, and he left in June.
Did you know when you were in Berlin that you were about to leave Germany, or was it unexpected?
Yes, we knew. I knew we were going to Brazil.
And what were your feelings about leaving Germany?
Well, actually, I don't think I bothered very much about it. I knew we had to leave, and nothing special. I was afraid, of course. I knew it was very. I remember something. And one day in our apartment in Görlitz here, if a boy, I don't know whether he was our friend or not, and he asked me, is it true that you're going to Brazil? I said, yes. He said, don't you know the Affen, what's Affen?
Monkeys?
Monkeys walk in the street there. Actually, I never saw one, my whole life, but I was afraid, of course.
And Brazil was because you had relatives there? What was the reason?
Yes, my mother's younger sister had gone to Brazil. She was a wet nurse, and she had a friend. She was not Jewish. She was married to a Jewish doctor, and she emigrated she was of a noble family in Germany. And she and her Jewish husband had emigrated to Brazil, and when she had 2 boys, and asked my aunt to go there and take care of them. She was a Säuglingsschwester, and then my aunt stayed there. She never came back.
And she helped you get the visas?
Excuse me?
She helped you get the visa?
Yes, she sent a visa.
What happened to other family members? Were they able to immigrate too, or did they?
Well, my mother's family had gone to Israel before, 1 or 2 years before us, and took my grandmother, my mother's mother, with them. And my uncle stayed here, and another sister of my father's, she was between Fitzcohn's wife, and my father was the youngest of 5 children. And they failed to leave Germany. They lived in Chemnitz, and he had a big factory there, something. And probably, I believe some people didn't want to leave everything they had behind. And when he tried to leave Germany, he couldn't do it anymore. He had nobody to send him a visa or something. So in the end, they were killed. But their 3 children they had sent by the Kindertransport to England before. And they were killed. But they were the only of our smaller family who were killed.
You mentioned your uncle Fritz Kohn. What happened to him?
Well, I don't know, because he stayed here. You told me about it. I never understood how he made it until 1941 here in Görlitz. But I don't know what happened to them, because I was 10 years old or 11 years old when they arrived in São Paulo. They lived in São Paulo. And of course, they didn't discuss any of these things in front of us.
And before emigration, you lived in Berlin. Do you know how long you did stay there?
Yes, from November until we left on December 31st, 1938. We went to Paris.
I suggest let's take a break here. And
okay.
Good.
Well, I'll drink some water.
Bernard, you're doing such a great job. It's perfect. You left Germany, you said, at the end of 1938. Do you remember the exact date when you left Germany?
December 31, 1938.
And
Sorry.
Achso, was ist das Kabel? Müssen wir nochmal?
Ich wollte, na gut.
Fangen wir da nochmal an?
Ja, besser. Hör nochmal an, bitte, ja.
Do you remember the date when you left Germany?
Yes, it was on December 31, 1938.
And at the time, did you know that you wouldn't return to Germany for a long time?
Yes, of course.
Can you describe the journey from Berlin?
Well, we took a train to the border, the French border. I remember we had to go down leave the train at the border, and there was some restaurant or I don't know, some building we had to go in to be searched. We knew we were going to be searched there. And I had a small purse full of coins, and my brother said, you cannot leave them, otherwise they will be nasty to you. So we went in and bought a plate of scrambled eggs. And I was terrified because I knew we were going to be searched. But it was a woman. She was very nice, and of course we had nothing nothing that was forbidden. And then we went into a train for France on the other side, and the people in there, the policemen, and some were of course very kind. And I remember we had a red velvet compartment, the three of us. I found it so strange because everything was red. And we went as far as Paris. I don't know how long it took. And we went to a hotel. At first, my mother took us around the Paris to show us this and that. I remember seeing where Napoleon's remains were buried, and that big obelisk, and she took us around. And then she left us, both my brother and myself, she left us at the hotel and went to Boulogne-sur-Mer, where we were to take the ship, the steamer, to Brazil. It was an English ship, and it didn't dock. I remember we went in the evening. It was very cold. It was on January 13, we arrived, and I don't know the exact date anymore. And we had to take we take a small boat. It was not a small boat, a boat. And then we had to walk over on a plank, and I looked down and saw the sea below us, and I was very afraid, of course. But we went into the ship. It was very nice, and we had about 13 days we traveled. At first the weather was very bad, and everybody got sick. But then it was very nice, and they had a part of the ship was for children. We had our own dining room, and we played ping pong. And there was after we passed Lisbon, the weather was very nice. So there was a pool, a canvas pool there too. And my mother played one ping pong. What would you say? They played, and she got the first place. She was very proud. I remember her smoking. I had never seen her smoke in my life. Everybody loved my mother. And then I remember a party when we went over the equator. No? And then we arrived in Rio first, and then we went to Santos, the other in our state of São Paulo, and my father was there to meet us.
Do you remember the name of the boat that took you to Brazil?
Highland Patriot.
Was it an English boat? Or?
English boat. There were 5 Highlands. I don't know the name of the others. Ours was called Highland Patriot.
And were there other immigrants on the boat too?
I don't know.
And
Probably.
do you remember what you felt when you got off the boat in Brazil?
Well, I was so happy my father was that. And first thing we did was to have some black Brazilian coffee. And then we took a train because Santos is at the sea and Sao Paulo is 800 meters higher, and we took a train and we had 25 coffin, what's that in English, bags with us. My mother had bought everything she could because she knew we wouldn't have money to buy anything. She brought two, I remember. One she was for my father, this size, with razor blades. Is it razor blades? And she took for me 25 dresses in different sizes because she knew I wouldn't be able to. She wouldn't be able to. And they were awful. Everybody laughed at me with those.
Were you able to bring something from Germany that was especially dear to you, like a toy? Or
Yeah, my dolls. You know, my dolls had a crib with a veil over it. They had a big car, and another one for the dolls to sit on. And when we had a neighbor there. They were very nice. I'll tell you later. And she had a baby that came before the time, and so my mother gave her all these things, and she raised her little baby in the crib of my dolls.
Were you allowed to take some of the dolls to Brazil? Did you take some of your dolls to Brazil?
Yes, of course, yes.
Do you still have them?
No.
What day did you arrive in Brazil? Do you remember?
January 13, 1939.
And what was your first impression of the new country?
Well, my parents left us in Sao Paulo with a German family, but they were not Jewish. And I was supposed to, she had settled it with another family where there was a girl my age, but I cried so much because they were going away and I didn't want to be separated from my brother, so they left me there too. But they were German and Nazis, of course. And they treated my brother very badly, you know. But I didn't have any trouble. And we started learning a little. The boys spoke Portuguese too. We learned a little German there. We stayed until school started in the next month. And then my mother came to fetch us.
And where did your parents go when they left you in Sao Paulo?
They went to another state because they had traded at the time. If you had something to trade a business with you, you could give your business here to somebody else and with that money buy the other one. And it was a German. I only know of a man. I don't know whether he had a family. And that's been told to me. We were not there. My parents arrived after a 16-hour train ride, and he gave them the keys and said, showed everything. It was a notion shop. And here's everything, and here are the keys, and tomorrow morning you can open the shop and start working. And when my parents arrived, the shop was empty. He had stole everything in it and went off. And I learned this later, my mother was so desperate, but we had a cousin who lived in Sao Paulo and had emigrated 5 or 4 years before. He was in a good financial situation. And then she wrote to Israel, but of course that took a long time, back and forth. And they helped her to buy goods again. But they worked very hard. And they didn't know how to speak Portuguese. My mother had lessons in Portuguese lessons in Germany together with my brother. But when they arrived, nobody would understand them because the Portuguese of Portugal is very different from the Brazilian Portuguese. So I remember her telling us, they stayed at a hotel first, excuse me, and she would read a dictionary to learn the words. They had a hard time.
And you stayed in Sao Paulo, right?
1 month, until March, when the end of February, I don't know exactly, when school started. Then they came to fetch us. She came to fetch us.
And how were you treated, your family, as refugees in Brazil?
Well, the neighbors were lovely people. They all came because we didn't have any, my mother had a lift with all our furniture and things, and she bought everything electric. Nobody there had ever seen an electric icebox, or not icebox, fridge. And but the lift arrived 9 months later in September. And until then, I remember she just bought a few beds and mattresses, and all the neighbors helped, came with this and that, and pots and pans and chairs, and helped us. The Brazilians are very, very nice people, yeah.
So apart from your family that helped after the shop, the goods were stolen, and the neighbors, did you get any help from the state?
Financial, not, no.
Was it difficult for you as a child to start a new life in Brazil?
Well, my first year was very bad because I was tall, much taller than my classmates. Because as I didn't know one word in Portuguese, I had to go back to the second school year. And I was much taller. I had funny clothes. They laughed at me all the time because I didn't know a word of Portuguese. It was very difficult at first. But then the next year, I didn't know Portuguese, but I knew mathematics, and they transferred me to I jumped to the 4th grade, and then my father asked there which was the best school. He wanted to take me out of the public school, and they were told the Catholic schools were the best ones, so they enrolled us. Me in the French, there were French nuns, and my brother went to the Catholic school of the priests there.
Do you remember the name of your school with the nuns?
Yes, it was. Well, not in English. It was not Our Lady of our Pains or something like that. They were French. They were very nice to me. I was the only one at school that was not Catholic. and they respected us because there were Protestant ones. They had them to go over their faith, but they didn't do it with us.
Did you miss Germany?
Yeah. Yes, of course. And my father, all his life, he said, in Germany this was better, and in Germany this, he couldn't forget Germany, you know.
What did you miss most?
Excuse?
What did you miss most?
Well, I didn't felt at home at first, but I had a lot of friends, our neighbors, everybody. We would play in the afternoon at one place, and every Sunday they would invite me to have dinner with them. I had a very nice life. I can't complain, but I miss Germany, of course. Huh? Our relatives and the family and everything.
Can you describe a little bit your father's business?
Well, you know what a notion shop is? Everybody there, it was a small town, and everybody would sew or how do you say, knit or everything. They had a lot of things, and everybody came to this shop. And my mother, of course, she had a very good business mind. And in 2 or 3 years, it was the best shop in town. It was small, but there were people all the time. My father didn't have a patience when somebody came in, and there were big boxes with those goods in there. And when somebody, you know, when women go to choose this and that, and he would lose patience and shut the box and say no, nothing, which means I don't have it. So my mother made him take care of the of everything that was not attending the people, but everybody loved my mother. The whole town went and shopped there, so they had a good business there.
And where did you live? Did you have an apartment or a house? Where did you live? Did you have an apartment or did you live in a house in your new
No, we lived in a house. Later on we moved to a small apartment. It was, you just went over the street and the shop was there. But at first we had a house, and we rented a house, and then one of the neighbors built a house on the same street going up, and he built a house for him, and he built another one for us and rented to us and let it to us.
And could you tell us the name of the city you lived in again?
Uberaba. Uberaba. In Minas, the state is Minas Gerais.
What language was spoken in your family at home?
German.
And the neighborhood was Brazilian, purely Brazilian, no other German refugees around?
No, not refugees. There was one family, but they were Nazis. And their house was full of Hitler's likeness over there. At first they invited us, but then the war started in September 1939, and my mother wouldn't have anything to do with them anymore. We know because the police came to our home. We were Germans, and they came to our home and took everything that could be German away. But after the war, they gave us back my father's condecoration, and he had a lot of, he had been in France, and he had a lot of, I forget, a lot of photographs, just in the album. And they took it all away. And we were We as German, we were German. Nobody knew we were Jewish, and there were no Jews in town. And we were forbidden to speak German on the street. That's why my brother and I always talked Portuguese with each other. But we didn't have any other kind of trouble.
And was there news of the events in Germany during the war? Did you hear about that?
Well, I remember my father, the first thing he did was subscribe a São Paulo newspaper. And I remember 1st September 1938, when the newspaper came, it came the afternoon or next day. It was written in this size, war. I knew the war had started in Germany.
And how did you learn about your relatives' fate? Did you hear from them?
No, actually I didn't know about it, because my mother's family was in Israel. They had been able to buy some land there. They had a whole court, a whole I don't remember, very big place there in Herzliya, and they sold roses, they grew roses, and my uncle there was, later on, was the director of the Zim lines, and so they had a nice life there. And what was your question?
If you heard what happened to if you knew what happened to your family members?
Yes, I knew where they were. The only ones who were killed were those two.
And you mentioned that you went to school in this Catholic schools with the nuns. What was your education in Brazil?
Well, I was excused from because the girls had to go to mass and all that. I was excused from it. It's funny because the Protestant, there were 4 or 5 Protestant children, they had to be baptized, but they didn't mess with us. They came to, later on, I spent 4 years there, and they came and to talk to my mother. Everybody in town wanted to be my godmother. And my mother said, when my daughter is 18, she can choose whatever she wants to be. As long as she lives with us, she'll be Jewish. And they respected it.
What was your professional training?
Well, my mother insisted, I didn't want to, but she insisted that I take a secretarial course. So there was no further education there unless you wanted to be a teacher, and a teacher I wasn't going to be anyway. So they sent us to a school in São Paulo, a boarding school, me and my brother, because my brother had finished the gymnasium, those years, and he was going to study engineering. And so we both went to the same school, but apart, of course. And we stayed there. I never returned. I just returned for vacations, and then I never returned there.
Do you remember the name of that school? Do you remember the name of that school?
Mackenzie College. Mackenzie. It was not American exactly, but it had been founded by Americans, and I had to take private lessons because I didn't know a word of English. Our teacher, our nun teacher, was one lesson ahead of us. She was learning English to teach it to us, so she didn't know anything and we didn't know anything. I had two years private lessons with an American teacher.
You said your mother chose your profession, so if you had the choice, what would you have liked to become?
Actually, I wanted to study engineering, but I think she was right, because I loved it. At the first day, we were sent at a typewriter, and I loved the course.
And after the training, what company did you work for?
Well, I had several jobs. At first, I went. I was still there and living in the boarding school. They let me stay another 6 months because when I finished that course I took, I didn't want to go back to my town because my friends there, the only thing they thought about was to make a trousseau and get married. And they were so provincial, you know. And when I arrived at the American school, I loved it. I had very good friends, that for life. And I didn't want to return. Actually, it happened because I sometimes there came friends from other towns around there, and they didn't speak Portuguese. Friends and relatives of people living there, and one friend came to me and said, "Listen, you have to excuse me if I go around here and there. I won't be able to get married. I'll have a bad name here." Because we went all around with the boys and everybody, so I never returned on vacations. I stayed or I would go by this time I had many friends in São Paulo. And I found a part-time job, and they were Jewish. And I remember I was working there when Israel was recognized as they all write big fat checks and sent it to Israel, everybody. And then I worked for a few years for a Swedish company. They were wonderful, but then I got married and stopped working.
Did you still identify as a German after the war when you lived in Brazil?
Well, I was German. I consider myself German. My education, my ways, my manners were completely different from Brazilians.
So, what would you describe as typically German?
The kind of upbringing, it's different. I can't explain. It's different too. They were very at a small town. There were big families. They were always in. When somebody died, they were all clad in black, and they never were able to leave those black clothes because the families were very big, and for a husband and a mother, they went in black the whole year, then 6 months for a brother and 3 months and the families were so big, they were always clad in black. So it didn't apply. I didn't like that. But São Paulo was different. I had a Jewish crowd for some time, but I had a lot of Brazilian friends too. So.
How old were you when you left school?
17.
And how long did you work, or how old were you when you met your husband?
I met him, I was 20. Yes, 20, 21. We were married when I was, 20.
How did you meet?
At a birthday party. And he was he came to me, he said, "You're Jewish, aren't you?" I said, "Yes." Well, he had 2 Jewish friends, and we were at the same school, but I had left the school by this time. And he had a Jewish friend and a Jewish girlfriend, not girlfriend, a girl and a boy. And this friend of his, was very interesting in going to Israel. So we talked the whole evening about my family. I was telling him how life was there in Israel. I knew all about it. And so we started dating, and he was still at school studying. He was studying chemistry, and when he graduated, we got engaged.
What was your husband's name?
Lazzaro Langiani. Yeah,
what was his origin or nationality? Was he an immigrant?
His father was from Italian side. It was an Italian side. They had come at the turn of the century. There was a big immigration to Brazil of poor Italians, and his mother was. Her family came from Madeira Island. She was Portuguese. She was born in Brazil, but her mother was, and her great-grandfather was the English consul at Madeira at the time. We did a lot of searching about her family. But they were, I loved the family because they were they were 4 brothers, and their house was always full of people, and those big, I found this, so we were 4 at our home. My father hardly spoke. Everything was very quiet at our place, and I came there, and they always, each of the boys had other friends who came, and those big, I found this wonderful, this big family. Only very much later I found out they were always, in family they were very, the brothers were always quarreling.
So
the Italian way, you know.
But your husband was born in Brazil, right?
Yes.
Let's jump back to your
no,
family.
Even my mother-in-law and my father-in-law, they were born in Brazil.
Let's jump back to your family. You mentioned your father being a really quiet person. How was your family life? Did you observe, how did you continue Jewish life in Brazil?
Well, as long as I was single, on holidays I would go to the synagogue on holidays, but not every. We were even the other family members were not very religious.
So was there Hanukkah at the end of the year?
No, my parents did not celebrate anything.
And your husband's family was Jewish or non-Jewish?
No, they actually, in Brazil it's very common, children get baptized, but they don't go to, I never saw my husband in a church, unless it were a wedding or something. They didn't care for religion.
So you said you loved your husband's big family. What did you like about him?
Him? I don't know. I just fell in love with him. But well, I liked Brazilians. They had another way of living. They were lighter-headed, so to speak, you know. My father was always very serious, and he didn't talk. I started talking with my father when, after I got married, had my children. He started to tell me about his youth and that, but he never spoke. He was always sitting in an armchair reading his paper, and sometimes my mother would come at home, and he was sitting in the dark waiting for her to come and turn on the light. I never ever in my life saw my father in a kitchen, neither in Germany nor in. He was he was always so, he was not happy. He was very unhappy. He always would say, in Germany, this and so, everything is better.
And your mother, was it easier for her to
Yes.
adapt to
Yes,
Brazilian
yeah.
life?
My mother adapted to anything, you know.
You mentioned that your husband studied chemistry. What was his profession?
Well, actually, his family, his father had an earth moving business, so he took it over then. My father-in-law retired and he took care of the business.
And when did you get married?
In September 21, 1952.
And where did you live with your husband?
The first 6 months we lived at my mother's place because we had no money. We wanted to work and save some money, and then we rented an apartment.
It's a private question. Did they get on, your husband and your...
Excuse-
Did they get on, your husband and your mother?
My mother didn't like him. He never got over. She was very Jewish, you know. My father didn't mind. He liked him. They went somebody on Sunday mornings. They would go and get something to drink together. My father could hardly speak Portuguese, but they went along fine. My mother didn't like it. She never got over it.
Because she wanted a Jewish son-in-law.
Wanted me. I had a cousin, this cousin who was living there, and every other Sunday I would be invited for a lunch at his home. And he lived with his mother, and every time I came there was a young Jewish boy, a young man, and they tried to get me married off to a Jewish, but it didn't work. So I had to ask my mother to tell him not to invite me anymore.
How many children do you have? How many children? When was your first child born?
Well, before Verena, I had a stillbirth, a boy. But I soon after it, I was pregnant again. Verena, the oldest one, she was born in 1954. Then came my son Marcos in 1957 and Claudia in 1962.
So you have 3 children. Did you raise your children as Jew in the Jewish religion?
No.
And what language did you speak with your children?
Portuguese.
No.
I tried speaking German, but I got tired. Verena, at first I spoke German with her all the time. But I remember I showed it to her, and when I said, "Da ist das Licht," she would look up. But I got tired of speaking by myself all the time, so I just let it go. And my husband didn't like people speaking German around him, so I gave it up.
Did you tell your children about your exile experience?
Not at first. Later on, when they were adults, they knew about it.
Were they interested in their family story?
Not so much, you know, no.
And what about Ernst, your brother? What did he do in Brazil? Did he have what career did he have, and did he have a family?
Well, actually, my parents didn't want the big. He wanted to be an engineer, and my father said he could, because my father had to pay 4 times, one for the boarding school, and one for the school itself. And my brother insisted he wanted to be an engineer. So my father told him told him, okay, I'll pay your engineering course and everything else you have to work for it. So he gave lessons to he was very intelligent. And he gave lessons to the students, the young people who studied with him. So he made some money and was able to pay for his own, his personal expenses. And then he got a job, a part-time job too, but he also married a Brazilian Catholic. And he converted to the religion.
And
She wouldn't marry him unless he got baptized, but I didn't.
Did they have children? Do you have
Yes,
nieces and
two.
nephews?
One is of the group here, Joyce Moore. She has a lot of documents still. I had some and she had many.
And do you have grandchildren? Do you have grandchildren?
Yes, 7. Verena has 3 children. They live abroad, all of them. One lives in England. She's coming this week over. One in Australia, and a boy, he lives in what's that big island near New Zealand.
New Zealand. Could you tell us their names?
Patricia, and the second one is called Fabiola. She lives in Australia, and the other is Renato.
Named after you?
Yeah.
And that's
Renato Moore Placinetti. My husband asked his father to leave my name, my family name.
That's Verena's children, so there must be 4 more. You mentioned 7 grandchildren.
Excuse me?
You mentioned you have 7 grandchildren?
No, never.
Okay, sorry, so I'm...
Yes, they are 7, but
Okay.
I never imagined I would have so many grandchildren.
And what are the names of the other 4? You just told us the names of Verena's children.
Patricia in England, Fabiola in Australia, and Renato in New Zealand.
These are Verena's children, and the others?
Well, who comes next? Marcos has 2 boys. They live in the same city as I. And then comes Claudia's children. She has a boy, a young man. He just got married now. And a girl, 20 years old.
Can you tell us their names? Can you tell us their names?
Felipe and Giovanna. And
So-
their father died. He died.
So, did your exile experience, do you have the feeling that this experience affected your later life?
Which period?
That the experience of you having to emigrate from Germany, did this have an effect on your life?
Yes. Well, I'm partly Brazilian. When I was younger, I was more Brazilian than now. As I get older, I go more to the German side, German Jewish side.
So before we talk about your return to Girl, let's have another break.
Okay.
So here we are. So, okay. Also wir haben jetzt etwa noch 10 Fragen, dann sage ich am Schluss vielen Dank und dann machen wir wieder eine Pause und dann richten wir uns die Fotos. Ja? Okay. Are you ready to continue?
Yes.
Super.
Yes, I'm
Okay,
just reading
kriegen wir ein
it.
Signal, wenn wir weitermachen sollen? Können wir? Kriegen wir ein Signal?
The pages are not numbered here. I have the wire. It seems the same thing. Returns to Görlitz.
Okay.
This is twice almost the same thing. Now this is about Eva Goldberg. I don't know what's doing here. Which are the questions you have
Now
here?
returns to Görlitz. Returns to Görlitz. The next question is, you returned to Görlitz several times after the war. What made you come back?
I made to
So,
come back.
okay.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
But there's something missing here. I can't find it. At the end about the young people here, I can find it. Oh, just a minute.
Können wir das an? Läuft das die ganze Zeit? So let's talk about your returns to your hometown Görlitz. You've returned several times. What made you come back?
Well, the first in 1986 and 1988, I came to Germany, but I didn't. The wall was still there, and I couldn't see Görlitz. So after the wall fell, in 1997, I came to Munich to visit the sister of my sister-in-law who lived there. And I told her I was very interested in coming back to Görlitz and see it. So she called the city hall here and said, I have here a sister-in-law of mine, and she very much wanted to see Görlitz again, and how can we go about it? So they invited me and chose Mr. Turp to show me the town. They received me at the city hall, and I met Roland Otto, who gave me those books about Görlitz, and we spent a whole day. Yes, he came the day before to the hotel and asked me what I wanted to see. And I explained everything I remembered, and so he took us all over town, we took a lot of photographs. I have an album with over 100 photos I took of the whole town. We spent a marvelous day. So
Was it still your hometown? Did you recognize it?
yes, I did. I remember every place he took, because I told him what I remembered, and so he took me everywhere, and he took me to the synagogue too. They were rebuilding it, and it was supposed to be a cultural center at the time. They invited me in and showed me everything. They were very nice. I took a lot of photographs too. And then they, well, I don't remember what they did. I wanted to see my uncle's house too, but I did not. And everything I wanted to see, he showed to us. We spent
your uncle's house was still there?
Yes, it was. It was there, but it was closed down. I couldn't see it. I wanted to see it.
What were your feelings when you first came back to Germany, to the country you were forced to leave because you were Jews?
Well, I felt at home, you know. I just felt at home. I remembered everything, and everybody who came here, we always would take the photo at the same spot on Elisabethstraße, when you could see that there was a kind of Catholic something behind it. All the family had photos taken at the same spot.
Did your husband and children come to Görlitz with you, or did they understand why you wanted to go?
Yes, at that time I was by myself, but then in 2019 I brought them. We were 10, and my 2 daughters, 2 granddaughters, 2 nieces, and my great-grandson and his father, and we took a round of all the places again, went up to that hill. I always forget the name.
Landeskrone?
Landskrona, yeah. My father would take us there when I lived here. So everybody knows the town.
Now you're attending Jewish Remembrance Week in Görlitz. What does this mean to you? Over 60 descendants of Görlitz Jews come together in this week to reunite. What does it mean to you?
Well, I was very excited about it, you know, because I wanted to come. Last year there was some Remembrance Week too, but I couldn't come. And this time I said, no, this time I'm going anyway. I want to meet all those people and see what it is all about. And so I'm very happy to be here. And I saw that wonderful work Lauren Leiderman has done with the boys and all those the work they have done. And so I'm very happy to be here.
During Jewish Remembrance Week, you'll speak to German students. This will be on Friday. Why is it so important to you to reach these young people?
Yes, may I read that?
Definitely,
okay?
yes.
I wrote it down. And I find it important that this generation learns the truth about the past of the town before the war started, and later on, so they can understand that no such tragedy should ever happen again. It means both a homecoming for the many descendants of families who lost relatives or just left Germany and have a glimpse into the past of their families.
Is there anything you like to add?
Well, I just have to say I'm still under the spell of these days here and everything I'm still going to see and the people I'm going to meet. And that's all for now.
Thank you so much, Renate Moore, for this interview.
Thank you.
Okay. So, could you please tell us your name?
My name is Claudia Langiani.
And who are you in relation to the interviewee?
She's my mother.
When did you first hear about your mother's German past?
I think it was in my 20s, 15s, 20s.
And were you interested in hearing about your German background?
At the first, I think I didn't, but in the beginning I didn't. But then I was very I liked very much my grandmother, so we talked a lot. I spent the weekends with her, so I started to learn about the story.
And now you're accompanying your mother to Jewish Remembrance Week in Görlitz.
Mm-hmm.
Why is this important to you?
Oh, it's very important. I'm knowing more about their past and their story and the background of the family and the people that are joining this week. It's so important. It's amazing.
Why do you think it's important that your mother shares her story?
Well, they came from a very different, they went to a very different country. Brazil is very different from Germany, so I think it was very hard for them to know the language, a different culture, different people, and more important, their religion. So it's very important to share because we have to know their past and what they pass through.
Do you think it's important for kids in Germany to hear about the stories of the survivors?
Oh, very much, very much. They don't know what the war was like, what they had to deal with. It's very important.
Thank you so much, Claudia.
You're welcome. It's okay?
Who's that on that photo? Who's that on the photo? Can you explain? Who's this little baby?
Renate. Now, that's myself, of course.
How old were you at the
4 months.
4 months? Okay, thank you. So can you tell us who's on that photo?
Well, I don't remember it. I must have been 2.5 years or something like that. I don't know exactly.
And the boy next to you is? The boy next to you?
My brother, my older brother, Ernst Moore.
Can you explain who's on this photo?
My mother, Käthe Moore, and myself.
Do you remember?
At 3.5 years.
Can you tell us something about this photo on the left?
Well, it was my first day at school. After school, we got this cone full of sweets and chocolates, and I was very happy, of course. It was a great day for us, children.
Okay. Can you tell us who's on these photos?
Well, this was taken, I was 15 and my brother was 18 years old.
And that was in?
In São Paulo.
Okay. So can you tell us who's on this photo?
Well, from left to right, Ernst Moore Jr., who died at the age of 4. Joyce Moore, she's in touch with all these people now.
Is she his sister, your brother's
Yes.
children, right?
Yes, yes. Later on, she got another sister. This is Verena, this is Claudia, and this is my son Marcus. And this boy just was there. He was a friend, but he is not of the family.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.